So now we read about soil formation. You see plants growing in the soil. You play in the ground and come into contact with the soil. You touch and feel the soil and soil your clothes while playing. Can you describe it? Soil is a dynamic medium in which many chemicals, physical, and biological activities go on constantly. Soil is a result of decay. It is also a medium for growth. It is changing and developing body. It has many characteristics that fluctuates with the season. It may be alternatively cold and warm or dry and moist. Biological activity is slowed or stopped if the soil becomes too cold or too dry. Organic matter increases when leaves fall or grasses die. Process of soil formation. Soil formation or pedogenesis depends first on weathering. It is this weathering mantle which is the basic input for soil to form. First, the weathered material are transported, deposition or colonized by bacteria and other inferior plant bodies like mosses and lichens. Also, several minor organisms may take shelter within the mantle and deposits. The dead remains of organisms and plants help in humus accumulation. Minor grasses and ferns may grow later. Bushes and trees will start growing through seeds brought in by birds and wind. Plant roots penetrate down, burrowing. Animals bring up particles. Mass of material becomes porous and sponge like with capacity to retain water and to permit the passage of air, and finally a mature soil. A complex mixture of mineral and organic products form. Is weathering solely responsible for the soil formation? If not, why? Pedology is a soil science. Soil forming factors. Five basic factors control the formation of soil. One is parent material, two topography, three climate, four biological activity, five time. Parent material, topography, climate, biological activity, time. In fact, soil forming factors act in union and affect the action of one another. Parent material. Parent material is a passive control factor in soil formation. Parent material can be any in situ or on site weathered rock, debris that is residual soil, or transported deposit that is transported soil. Soil formation depends upon the texture and structure. Structure is deposition of individual grain and particles of debris. So, soil formation depends on texture and structure as well as mineral and the chemical composition of the rock debris or deposits. Nature and the rate of weathering and the depth of the weathering mantle are important consideration under the parent material. There may be difference in soil over similar bedrock, and dissimilar bedrocks may have similar soil above them. But when the soil are very young and have no mature, these show strong links with the type of parent rock. Also, in case of some limestone areas where the weathering process are specific and peculiar, soils will show clear relation with parent rock. Topography. Topography is like parent material is another passive control factor. The influence of the topography is felt through the amount of exposure of a surface covered by the parent material to sunlight and the amount of surface and subsurface drainage over And through a parent material, soils will be thin on steep slopes and thick over the upland areas. Over gentle slopes where the erosion is slow and percolation of water is good, soil formation is very favorable. Soils over the flat area may develop a thick layer of clay with a good accumulation of organic matter, giving the soil dark color. Next, climate. Climate is important active factor in the soil formation. Climatic elements involved in the soil development are moisture in terms of its intensity, frequency and duration of precipitation, evaporation and humidity. The second one is temperature in terms of seasonal and diurnal variations. Precipitation gives a soil its moisture content, which makes the chemical and biological activities possible. Exposure of water helps in the downward transportation of soil components through the soil and deposits the same down below. In climate like wet equatorial rainy areas with high rainfall, not only calcium, sodium, magnesium, potassium, but also the major part of silica is removed from the soil. Removal of silica from the soil is known as desilication. In dry climates, because of the high temperature, evaporation exceeds the precipitation and hence the groundwater is brought up to surface by capillary action, and in the process of the water evaporates, leaving behind the salts in the soil. Such salts form into a crust in the soil like hard pans. In tropical climates and in areas with the intermediate precipitation conditions, the calcium carbonate nodules are formed. Temperature acts in two waves, increasing or reducing chemical and biological activity. Chemical activity is increased in high temperature, reduced in cooler temperatures, with the exception of carbonation, of course, and stops in freezing condition. The chemical activity is stops in freezing conditions. That is why tropical soils with higher temperature show deeper profiles, and in the frozen tundra region, soil contains largely mechanically broken material. Next, the biological activity. The vegetative cover and the organisms that occupy the parent material from the beginning and also at the later stages help in adding organic matter, moisture retention, and nitrogen. The dead plants provide humus and finely divided organic matter of the soil. Some organic acids which form during the humification aid in decomposing the minerals of the soil parent materials. Intensity of bacterial activity shows up differences between the soil of cold and warm climate. Humus accumulates in the cold climates as the bacterial growth is slow. Humus accumulates in the cold climates as the bacterial growth is slow. With undercomposed organic matter because of low bacterial activity, undercomposed organic matter because of the low bacterial activity, layers of peat develop in the subarctic and tundra climates. In humid tropical and equatorial climates, bacterial growth and action is intense and the dead vegetation is rapidly oxidized, leaving the very low humus content in the soil. Further, bacteria and the other soil organisms take gaseous nitrogen from the air and convert into chemical form that can be used by the plants. This process is known as nitrogen fixation. Rhizobium, a type of bacteria which lives in the roots of nodules of the leguminous plants and fixes the nitrogen beneficial to the host plant. The influence of the large animals like ants, termites, earthworms, rodents, etc. is the mechanical, but it is nevertheless important soil formation as they rework the soil up and down. In case of earthworms, as they feed on the soil, the texture and chemistry of the soil that comes out of their body changes. Next, time. Time is a third important controlling factor of the soil formation. The length of the time of the soil forming process operate determines maturation of soil and profile development. The soil becomes mature when all the soil forming process act for the sufficiently long time, developing a profile. Soils developing from recently decomposed alluvium or glacial till are considered young, and they exhibit no horizon or only poorly developed horizons. No specific length of time in absolute terms can be fixed for the soil to develop and mature. Is it necessary to separate the process of soil formation and soil forming control factors? Why the time, topography, and the parent material considered the passive control factors in the soil formation? Because biological process activity and the climate are very dynamic.